Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel. That way, when I release more videos like this, you'll get notified. So welcome to the show, Ann. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Betsy. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
So before we get into our conversation, let's just love for you to just take a moment, introduce yourself and a little bit about what your business is all about.
Sure. So I work mostly with coaches, consultants, and even professional service entrepreneurs, and I help them really build a premium business. So very high-end clients, everything is at a higher level. So not the digital courses and things like that. That can all come later, but I really help them have a very streamlined, simplified business where they're working with high-level clients. And I've been doing that for a lot of years, and I fell into that because I kind of went down a lot of the rabbit holes and things that people go down when they get into the coaching and consulting space. And I was a bit frustrated with the value ladder and all of the things that are taught out there.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had more to offer. And so I took a step back from the way people were teaching coaches and consultants to build their business. And I built 5 other businesses and sold them. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 32 years. And I just knew I could do more with people. And I just wasn't happy with the, churn and burn kind of process that people were teaching. So I kind of took a step back and said, I'm either going to do this differently my way, or I'm going to do something different. So that's kind of where my program's Expert in You came from. So it's about helping experts leverage their expertise and build an entire business around that.
So are you a serial entrepreneur? Or are you more like, do you have a corporate background? Like, how did you get into consulting itself
Mm-hmm.
before we talk about, like, I definitely want to talk more about your business and how you help the experts in you get manifested in the world. But tell me a little bit about that backstory around how did you get to this place?
Yeah, so I was 13 years in corporate. I was in business management for a large retail company, a multi-billion dollar retail company. And I did that for 13 years until I had babies. And they were not very, we can talk about this all day. They were not
Hmm.
very kind about, women needing to have maternity leave and things like that. So we made the decision. I really wanted to stay home with my kids. I did not want my kids raised by daycare or a babysitter. And we were living in California at the time. And so we made the decision to move back to the Midwest where we were from so we could raise the kids around family. And where we moved, there was no opportunity at all. I mean, there just really wasn't any opportunity. So I was looking for a way to make money and I started my first business. And that business went global. I was at that time, the craft industry was kind of exploding across the country. And I thought, oh, maybe I can make something with this box of stuff. I mean, this is really how it started. And so I turned that into a global kind of a creative doll business and was shipping all over the world and I was kind of running a manufacturing company out of my home. I had a lot of moms working for me and did that for 7 years. And then I sold all of my designs out to a company. So sold that first business and went on to build 2 health clubs, 2 weight loss centers. And then I came into coaching because in my last 2 businesses, I kind of opened those during the recession. I expanded during the recession when a lot of people were shutting down. And I hired my first business coach because I was struggling in the market, in the new market I had gone into, and it was a marketing problem. It wasn't a business problem, it was a marketing problem. And I hired my first coach who also happened to be a brilliant marketer, and she turned everything around. And I wasn't losing money in those businesses, but I wasn't making money in those two. And I was kind of killing myself going between 4 businesses, and they were an hour apart. And so I hired my first coach and I thought, oh my gosh, this has been amazing. This is something that I think I would love to do. And so I really just became such a student then of marketing and business and everything. And until I kind of had business owners coming to me asking me how have you, and by then I had sold sold the other 2 businesses. And so it was really a natural progression for me. I always say everything kind of found me. I didn't find a lot of the things that I'm doing. They kind of found me. So I started coaching. I started working with small business owners first. and consulting. I didn't even call myself a coach. I called myself a consultant, and worked in all different types of companies and businesses. And then I fell into the coaching and consulting niche in particular because I was part of a coaching organization for business coaches. And a lot of the strategies and things they were teaching, I was one of the only coaches even doing very well, because I figured it out and I kind of did my own thing. And so they were promoting me within that organization. Well, Ann, is doing this and doing this, and they started coming to me. And instead of building their business, I decided to build my own business with coaches and consultants. So that's sort of how I transitioned into that. So that's a long-winded answer.
It's so interesting. It's like we have a lot in common in our stories. As I'm hearing you talk about like leaving your corporate job in the first place, your motivation was the same as mine, is that you wanted to organize your career around your kids. So let's talk about that for a second. And then I'm gonna pick up on a couple other threads. How old are your kids now? And was it hard for you to make that decision? And do you have any insight from hindsight, around what it's like to build your career around your family?
It was not hard for me because I truly felt that it's what I was called to do. As much as I loved my career up to the point where I had kids. And then it was such a grind, taking them to daycare and doing all of that. And I thought, this isn't what I had kids for. Why would I want kids? And then I worked these crazy retail hours, and it was just, and I brought a lot of the stress home, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I honestly, Betsy, felt like it was a calling to do it. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. And I didn't know how we were going to make it work to do it. So I just started praying about it, and I just knew, that there would be a way if it was meant to be. And then I don't think my husband knew I prayed about that, but then he lost his job.
Oh my gosh, at the same
So
time?
yes, at the same time that I was praying for sort of an answer. And I really did have a desire to move back to be around family. We had been in California for 10 years. And as I loved it until we had the kids. And then everything kind of changed, and how I felt about things changed. So I really wanted to move back to the Midwest, but my husband did not want to. And so then when he lost his job, he finished a big job, a big project that he was hired and even moved to do. And he had no idea that once he finished that they would let him go. He had no idea it was really kind of crummy on the company's part. They didn't end up making it years later anyway. They went bankrupt, but probably because of decisions like that, I'm sure.
Yes. So yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
but
Yes.
it forced us then to take a hard look at it really forced us to decide to make a change. And so I really knew my prayers were answered, not quite the way I had wanted them to be, but he came back and looked for a job and found one right away. And we moved back. But the math didn't really work with his paycheck. He was driving back and forth into the city, and it was costly, and it was just the math didn't work. I couldn't squeeze another dime out of his paycheck, and it was so frustrating. And there really was a turning point when my son needed shoes, and I sat down and cried because we didn't have the extra money. And
Wow.
that was a really tough place to be. And I just started looking for an answer, praying for an answer. So, and I got the idea, oh, maybe I can make something out of this box of stuff that's worth $15.
So did you have the business idea before you left, or did you decide I'm going to leave and then the business idea appeared?
Yes, I actually started, we moved and we bought a home and moved kind of to the country. So we were miles, out of town. And again, this was
By the way,
32
where in the
years ago.
Midwest are you
So
from?
yes, I'm in Missouri. So yes.
Oh, are you?
So mhm. So we moved to the country, and there just wasn't, again, opportunity. I would have had to drive into the city if I was going to go back into my career. And it was just, something that just wasn't going to work. And so started looking for a way. But no, I did not have any idea to build a business at all. Although it's really funny because I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I didn't even realize it because I went the corporate career path. But my first business was when I was about probably 7 years old, and I sold craft classes to the neighborhood kids.
Oh my gosh, that's
And I made them
awesome.
pay. I was like, yeah, okay, there's materials here and you have to pay if I'm going to teach you how to do this. And I don't remember what I charged, but I do remember doing that. And then I always was in sales of some kind. Like I would sell myself to clean people's houses, and I would sell myself to, I would sell seeds, like flower seeds and vegetable seeds, and, and I did things like that for money. So I have really been an entrepreneur for making my own way for a lot of years. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting sometimes, like those entrepreneurial skills, how they showed up. Like when I look at
Mhm.
my career, I was always the person who started departments and I started new opportunities all the time within an organization. So it was a more natural fit. But I think what I would love to get more clarity on from you, because there's a lot of people that I work with who are trying to leave their corporate job and start their own business, but they deal with a lot of fear in between.
Mhm.
The big questions: how am I going to replace my salary with business revenue? How am I going to not let everybody else down? What am I going to do? But it seems like you didn't have those same kind of fears that others may have. And on top of it, you were in a situation where your husband had lost his job. So the
Mhm.
logical side, I know somebody's thinking like, well, Ann, why didn't you just go get a corporate job for a little while? Like while your husband's trying to figure stuff out. Like, how did you get to this kind of Zen place on, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to take a step, and I'm going to trust that the bridge will appear after I take this
Mhm.
step?
I just have not ever really been someone that is afraid to do things and take risk. And I feel like I have a good gut instinct about things, and I also have a very strong faith. And so I rely on that a lot as well. But I also know what I'm capable of doing. And I really believe that you can do, if you really put in the effort, you can be pretty good at most things, right? Most people don't stick with something long enough. So I do know that I am someone that I'm very resilient. I'm very committed. When I commit to something, I committed to be a mom. I was going to figure out how to make that work. Sure, I could. The one thing I didn't say is part of the reason too why it was not going to work for me to go back and get a job is because when my husband lost his job, he gave back his company vehicle. So we moved back and we had one vehicle. So when I grocery shopped and did all of those things, that was on the weekends. I didn't have a vehicle during the week. So
Wow.
yeah, so there were a lot of factors. The other thing is if you think about the cost of daycare and all of those things, I would have had to have a fairly significant job. And if I'm driving and he's driving, I'm right back to where we were. And that wasn't what we made the move for. So I was very committed to finding a way, and prayed about it, and so that worked. But my thought for people, I was also somewhat forced into making it work because I didn't have any other options. But I think that I would have done that anyway, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense, because I just think that's who I am
So
as a
it sounds like
person.
that there's a few components that were working for you that got you over the hump that a lot of people get stuck at. One, obviously, it seems like you have a strong faith. So you believe that
Mhm.
you do know, if I walk off the map of my comfort zone, that the security will appear at some point in time. So it sounds like you have that. But it sounds like there's a real trust in your resilience and your stick to itness
Mhm.
that you had, that seems like it might have just been a gift from your childhood or just the way you're wired. Is, if somebody doesn't have that same gift, what would you say about how to build that trust in yourself and build that trust in your own stick to itness and determination?
I love that you're talking about this, because one of the things that I say is it really is something that can be developed. And if you do it, you take that step, you don't get growth staying comfortable, right? You don't get growth in your comfort zone. So if you take that step and you commit to the step, it's like burn the boats, right?
Mm-hmm.
No going back. If you do that, then I believe you can accomplish it if you just are willing to put in the effort and put in the work and do the things that need to be done. But to me, it's like a muscle, Betsy. You don't go to the gym one time and do a bicep curl and go, oh, hey, feel my
Right.
muscle, right?
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't work that way. You have to keep at it. It has
I
to be,
wish it
there has
worked
to be,
that way.
I
I don't
know,
like
wouldn't that
working
be
out.
so nice? Or,
Yeah.
hey, if I cut back on my meal today, I'll lose that 10 pounds.
That would be
That would be,
great. Why
it
can't it work out
would.
that way?
If we could come up with a solution like that, we wouldn't even have to be on this podcast talking
No.
about.
We'd be
um,
multi-bazillionaires, but
Absolutely. Elon Musk would have nothing on us, would he? but it is very much like a muscle. You have to do it and you have to keep doing it. And the more you do that, and I say this about taking risks too, I've taken a lot of really big risk in business as well. Things that other people would have never dreamed of doing. And it is so much like building a muscle. The more you do it, the more you're like, well, it's worked out before. And if it hasn't worked out, I found another alternative or another solution. And I think you can't take it too serious. And I don't mean that in the way of don't take it too serious. I mean, think about, okay, what is the worst thing that's really going to happen? You'll figure it out. You just
right.
will, right? You're not. And so I think sometimes people, I have to wonder where their fear really is coming from, because if you were just like, me sitting down and crying because my son didn't have shoes. I mean, they had been getting hand-me-downs from their cousins, and then all of a sudden we didn't have shoes for him, and I didn't have the money, and I always feel like there's a solution. So I wasn't just going to sit there and cry about it. Let's do something about it. I would have figured it out even if I wouldn't have started that business, I would have figured it out. But I knew I didn't like being in that place in my life where
Yeah.
I had to worry about every dime. Yeah. And yeah, so I know that was probably more of an answer than you wanted, but
No, that was a great answer. And I think it's really interesting to talk about the flip sides of fear. Like when I
mm,
think about, people ask me all the time the similar kind of question around like, well, where do you get the courage and what have you? I'm like, I'm afraid, but I'm afraid of different things.
yes.
So I'm not afraid of failing. I'm a continuous improvement girl at heart. So I'll throw something out and it fails, no problem. I'm not afraid of, even putting something out there that, people don't like and I get crickets or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm not even that afraid of money per se, because I believe similar to you. It's like, well, I'm in a benevolent universe that will support
hmm
me. So I feel comfortable with that. But my fear that I have that was bigger, that drove it for me when I left Disney in the first place, is this whole idea of living this unlived life. And it's like this whole idea of like the
mm,
regrets, what's going to
hmm
happen. My dad had recently passed, and it's like you, if I have a calling on something, or if I still have something in my heart, what's going to
hmm
happen if I don't follow that? And it's sort of like, from a spiritual standpoint, you could say like fear or fear not. Fear can
hmm
mean, something to be afraid of, or it could be something that you're reverent of. And I think that you have that reverence around, I'm more afraid of other things than this,
yes.
but in a good fear way. Is that accurate, or am I
I think
hearing you
that's
correctly?
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. I mean, to say we're never afraid of anything is crazy, right?
Right.
We're human. That's just the way it is. But yes, there's things that I'm more afraid of, the things I can't control, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
I feel like as long as I can control what I am doing, and I'm the one, that can navigate, and I'm the one that can pivot and shift and do all of that, I feel pretty good that I'll figure it out. I think what I am afraid of are things that you don't have any control over. What if something happens? What if,
Right.
you
Right.
know, those the life kinds of things. Those are the things that I'm more worried about.
I think it's fascinating what you just said about control, is that I think a lot of people think that if I leave my steady paycheck that I feel like I have control over to start my own business, they feel like
Mm,
I don't have control over how I'm going to make money. But I think in our experiences of being corporate leaders and being entrepreneurs, I feel like I have a lot more control being an entrepreneur than I do otherwise. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily see having their own business. You will have control, and you have control over your destiny and how much money you make
Mhm.
if you get into it and you can learn stuff.
Absolutely. And I think there is this idea that there's more security if you work as an employee. And don't get me wrong, we need employees, right? We need
Yeah.
them. But there is this idea that there's more security in that. And we just saw what happened with tech, right? With big
Mhm.
tech and all the
Mhm.
layoffs and all the companies that laid off, and even what happened during the pandemic. Guess what? I was still here during the pandemic doing my business. Were you? But
Mhm.
yet there were a lot of people that were not, and were let go or were laid off. And so to me, that is not secure. I would be more fearful in that situation. When I got pregnant and I was in that corporate career, and they were not very kind about they couldn't say it, right? They
Yeah.
can't say it. But even back then they couldn't say it, but you could just, it was just the way they dealt with everything, and just the way they treat. It's like I'm feeling guilty about having a baby. I mean,
Right.
really, what's wrong with this picture? And so those are the things to me that people should be more concerned with. And if they get into entrepreneurship, again, you have control over what you're doing. So yeah.
So it sounds like a little bit of your secret sauce is that you read the tea leaves of the situation you're in and evaluated its alignment with your values. That seems to be one big part of it. The second
Mhm.
big part of it is your faith that gave you the courage to act on your own values and live in accordance with your own values. There's a third component that it seems like you have a long history of being able to be resilient and trusting your own abilities to do something once you put your mind to it. And then there's this other component that you mentioned in the beginning of your story around being this learner, that it's like if you don't know it, you're going to learn it. Seems like
Yes.
there's another part that's just unique to the Ann situation, which is you kind of have this entrepreneurial bent your whole, your
Mhm.
longer life from the time you were a child. But these other components, those are part of your secret sauce that are learnable skills that other people can develop.
They really are. I think most people don't realize how much you can learn. I think most skills, I mean, most things are not, you have your natural gifts. There are certain things that I feel like are easier for me in my business. But then there are other things that are, oh my gosh, there's no way I can, I even wanted to take the time to learn that. Right. So I think you have to know what your natural gifts are, but you also have to realize that skills, just like sales, that would be a good example. Marketing, sales, the things that you have to know to be in business, those are just skills
Yeah.
that you learn, right? And most of business are skills. One of the reasons I love to help people take their expertise and package that and build a business around that is because now they don't have to go learn their thing. They just have to learn how to build a business. So it's a much faster path. But most people, they just have to realize that there's growth in everything they're going to do. It's just like getting a new job. You have to learn the job, and you have to learn that the things that you didn't know. So it's really no different, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think it's fascinating when like I don't know if you deal with this with your clients, is that there's such a block to learning these skills. It's almost like I should already know how to do this myth. Like, well,
Mhm.
you didn't know how to do what you needed to do when you got a degree and got all those years of experience that allowed you to climb up the ladder. So you didn't expect to know that, but why should you expect to know how to
Mhm.
run your own business when this is brand new to you?
Right. You really bring up a good point with that too, Betsy, and something that might help your listeners. When I was building my other businesses, they were all very different, right? And they were four of them were brick and mortar businesses. So the first one wasn't, but four of them were. And when I built those businesses and then I came into the online world, I had to hire a coach to help me online because
Mhm.
it was a totally different world. And even now, I'm still learning. I'm always still learning because things keep changing. And so if you don't have that attitude, or you don't have that growth attitude, I think you're not going to do well at anything that you're trying to do in entrepreneurship, because it's not, it's not static. It's dynamic, right? It's always moving. And so that was a whole different thing for me, to learn how to build a business online. Learn how to build a coaching business was very different from building health clubs. And so they're all skills, but I figured it out and I learned it and I did a lot of investing, and here I am. But you have to realize that that's going to be part of the journey.
And there's different times of how you feel about learning the skills. Like sometimes it's like, okay, this is fun. And then sometimes it's just so frustrating. Like how I wound up getting into doing more websites and copy and all that kind of stuff is I had transitioned from my B2B consulting business into my coaching and mentoring business. And I was trying to scale that up, and I was trying to do some sort of pipelines where I was doing webinars and landing pages, and I kept hiring people. And from a visual standpoint, it wasn't really, appealing to me. The copy wasn't working. And I was getting so frustrated with hiring people, and it wasn't working. And it was just one of those, like, we hit those walls at times when you're in your entrepreneurial learning curve, where I'm like, okay, I think I just want to stay in bed for the day. And I had a really wise friend, because I was complaining to him, like, why can't I, it was a coach. I'm like, why can't I find somebody to help me with it? And he's like, well, maybe you're not supposed to, maybe you're supposed to learn it. And it's like that little perspective shift, like just changed everything for me. I'm like, okay, I'm not a tech person. I'm not a graphic person. I never imagined myself to be a copywriter person, but I got in there and I started learning how to do it. And I mean, I could do a landing page now within like a few hours. Like one of the things I'm launching in the new year is a VIP day to help people with website copy or, a proposal or something in a day. And I would have never gotten there if I didn't get that little perspective shift, around the learning process. So there's an understanding we could have around the learning curve could be annoying, but it's also kind of fun, and that's what led you into the business you have now, correct?
Yes. And it's so interesting that you're saying that, because one of the things that I tell people is, look, learn the fundamentals of marketing. This is a good example. A lot of people want to outsource their marketing, or they want to outsource their sales. And I say, look, those are the two most valuable skills you can learn. If you can learn how to market and you can learn how to sell, you'll never be without a job. You'll never be without money. You'll always be able to go do something, right? And so I love that you actually talked about that, because when I hired that first online coach, and I was trying to build my business online, I mean, I could tell you the horror stories about, 90 days. We were setting up this webinar, and I had 6 whopping people show up for that webinar. This was 13 years ago. And then I sold after 90 days of all of this. And I had somebody that I sold a $600 program to. And I had to get on the phone and convince him to buy the $600 program. He did turn out to be my first national coaching client. So that was kind of a big boost and a big win. But I never dreamed, where I'm going with all of this is, I never dreamed I would be teaching this stuff to other people.
Right.
I just kept learning it. I kept growing. I kept doing. I know how to do websites. I do not do websites. I don't want to do websites. It's not anything I like. But somewhere along the line, I learned all of that. I learned how to build funnels. I learned all of those things. And here's the thing: even if you don't learn to do it to the degree that somebody that's going to do that for their business, you still need to know the ins and outs, in my opinion, so that if you're hiring the right help.
Oh my God. Yes.
Otherwise, you burn out money. You waste money.
Oh my God, you and I have so much in common. That's exactly it. Like I would say, like, learn the principles, because otherwise you don't know what you're doing. My first website, I just, outsourced the whole kit and caboodle. And then I hired them to do a second website. And little did I know, like, I was kind of like in this magical thinking kind of phase. Like I'm like a faith-based person, kind of like you were. I'm like, oh, I put the website out and magically people will come. And
if
what
I
I
build
didn't,
it, they will come.
but what I didn't know is I did some things right from an SEO standpoint. So I went from website 1 to website 2, and the same company, but they didn't tell me what I didn't know. And I broke all of my SEO. And then it's like, I broke everything. And then for some reason, I didn't know my contact us form was broken for like a year. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, I wonder why this website's not working. I'm like, this is so weird. Like, I wonder just, and it's like, I was in this like magical thinking phase. I'm like, no, there's strategy. There's
Mhm.
strategy behind it. Learn what you need to learn so that you at least can outsource properly. Like, I'm not a crazy
Yes.
fan of like email marketing, but it's like, you got to do it. And if I really want to get good at it, I'm probably
Mhm.
not going to learn that skill to mastery, but at least I need to know the purpose of email marketing. I need to know the purpose of these things.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, maybe if you're in I used to laugh when I would hear people say that they would teach CEOs and corporations how to do email. I'm like, really? But
Yeah.
it wasn't something they did, right? They had they had executive assistants and they had people that did that stuff for them. But when you're in your own business, it's a little bit different. You have to learn a lot of these skills. You can't afford not to. And again, even if you outsource them at some point, which is what I teach people to do, obviously, to outsource most of their stuff, you still have to know what you're doing, because you can't even train people. You can't even know who you're hiring if you don't have the fundamentals down. And all of those skill sets, even though they might be a pain to learn and you're like, oh, this is just, if you don't learn to sort of love the process and the journey, and you're not going to make it in entrepreneurship. I mean, that's
Mm-mm.
just the reality, because most of the time things aren't going to go perfectly, and so you just have to really learn how to navigate that and go with the flow. But just know that nothing goes to waste. And I tell my clients this all the time when they're struggling with, one particular thing. I'm like, you can't see it now, but it's not going to go to waste.
Right.
There will be some way that will be super valuable for you, besides just getting the thing done. In some other way, it's going to show up in your business and it's going to be valuable for you.
It's empowering to yourself to learn some of the skills. Like using your example of a CEO, if a CEO doesn't know what a decent email looks like that should go out to the organization, his assistant or her assistant could send it out and it may not look good. In my experience as a former OD consultant, I'll tell you, like the worst leaders are the ones who either got over promoted too quickly and didn't learn their business line effectively,
Mm-hmm.
or the ones that have only had one business line before they got to the C-suite. It's better to kind of flip around so that at least big picture. Like, yeah, you may not have to be doing finance, but you have to be able to at least read this. You have to read the reports. You have to read your numbers. Similarly, as the CEO of our own business, we may not
Mm-hmm.
eventually, as we grow, do everything, but we certainly need to know what excellence looks like in every aspect of our business in order to, as you were saying, like stay it in the long term and actually have a little fun, a lot of fun with it. One of the big
Yes.
things I'm launching also this year is a community where I'm bringing together people to learn together, because that's a lot more fun than just sitting there by yourself staring at a
Right.
computer. So you have to find a way to make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm curious, like how you went from let's go back to your story. I want to talk a little bit about your experience from like these brick and mortar stores. I mean, brick and mortar businesses
Yes.
that you were actually able to easily sell off and make money off of. Like, why would you go? Like, some people might be wondering, like, well, Ann, if you could do that again. That's easy wealth
Mm-hmm.
creation. You don't have to be hands on with people. Why would you do a business that requires, a lot more personal touch than the kind of businesses you had before?
Yes, that's a great question. If I think back to all those health clubs, and I was very involved in those businesses, because my first fitness business started me handing out flyers at a back to school barbecue, asking moms if they wanted to take aerobic classes. That tells you something, how long ago that was. And then it just continued to grow until it was this huge club. Um, but I was still very involved in those clubs, so I still loved training. I still loved teaching. I don't even know, Betsy, how many fitness certifications I got along the way, probably 30 or something like that. It was crazy. Um, but the reason that I like getting into coaching is because I think I've always coached. I've coached people with weight loss. I've coached them with their fitness. It's been a very natural thing for me. And so coaching was very natural, but I have a very different. So first of all, I've sold 5 businesses. So financially, it has really changed our life and put us in a really good place. And when I started coaching, this was sort of passion. Even though I'm still a business person at heart, I still want to make money. I still like a great lifestyle, all of that. I still love helping people. And
Mm.
a lot of people get into coaching and they want to build a big company. Nothing wrong with that. If you want to build a lot of coaches or a lot of consultants under you, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I help people do that. But for me, it isn't the right path for me at this time in my life. And that's one of the reasons why I love the premium model that I have and that I teach, because I get to have a really high end business doing what I love to do, and I still get to coach my clients, and I'm not stuck in all the minutia and the grind and the volume stuff that a lot of people are in, because everything is at a higher level. So I don't have to work with 100 clients. And that's the business that it really is aligned with my core values at this time in my life. If when I was 40, I might have thought differently. I might have had different ideas and a different vision, but that's just where I am now. So, yeah.
So it sounds like for you, coaching was a way for you to take your expertise and, pair your success with significance and helping people with what you knew and your journey and sharing, passing that wisdom forward. It's like, it seems like it's just more a part of your purpose and fulfilling
Mhm.
what you feel like is that expression to that next level of your career.
Oh, yes. If I can help people not make the same mistakes, and, I say the blood, sweat, and tears that I had through the years. Even if I look at marketing, I tell this story, when I was running my clubs, I would hire marketers, I would hire advertising agencies. I didn't really understand good marketing or effective marketing, and I hadn't really studied it. And I could run events and things like that. I was great at that. I did all that in corporate. But the marketing piece, the real marketing stuff, was like how to write ads and how to do copy and all of that. I did not understand the principles of marketing and what made good marketing. And I used to tell my employees, after I would pay, $1,500 or $1,600 to run an ad in the newspaper, and that ad would come out and we would get nothing from it. And I would say, I should have just thrown that money in the trash and lit it on fire. And I did that for many, many years. It was just a waste. In fact, the reason I hired my first coach, and I went to conferences and things like that, but we didn't have coaches available like we do now. They weren't a dime a dozen. And when this first coach showed up and told me that she could help me, I didn't even really understand how she could help me, because I didn't really understand what a coach did or what a
Mm.
coach was all about. But she was a brilliant marketer, and I was good at running businesses, and I knew how to build them, and I knew how to make money. What I was not good at was the marketing piece, and I was racking up credit card debt, and my big clubs they were paying for the other clubs to sustain them and pay the payroll and all of that. And so I just was at a place, at a crossroads, where I said, I have to do something. And so when I hired her, she was brilliant at marketing, and she showed me what I was doing wrong. And that was such a game changer for me. And where was I going with this story? I'm trying to remember.
Well, like what made you decide to go from, having your own business and coaching? So it sounds like from your own personal experience of the transformation that you experienced under a coach, it sounds like that ignited a fire in you to want to create that transformation in
That was
others.
it.
Okay. All right.
You can cut that part out.
No, that was a good story. No, I love that story.
But that really was how, I mean, that was, I kind of saw it as, oh my gosh, my next thing. And as I sold those businesses, like I said, it was kind of natural, because people were coming to me. How did you sell those businesses? Well, I knew enough that you have to build a turnkey business. You have to build something someone else can just step right into. And when I sold those, one thing about me, and I do know this about me, when I'm over something, I'm over it.
Yeah.
So when I was to the point where, oh, my coaching was taking off and it was doing really well, and I saw the opportunity, and I don't have to be tied down with all of this and payroll, and I jumped. I thought, why not? Why wouldn't I want to do that? So
So let's talk a minute about what makes a premium business. Like what's the distinctions between, somebody else is just, helping somebody start a coaching business or consulting business, because all of us business mentors would say, hey, I'm going to help you become a premium brand in the marketplace, and I'm going to help you go after this. Is it more like going after a different kind of clientele? Is it more like going after like a higher net worth individual? Like, what would you say is the difference?
It could be both. So most of the coaches and consultants I work with work in the business sector. So corporate or in business with small businesses or the professional side of things. And that's my sweet spot because that's what I know best. But it is really about going after that higher value client. But a lot of people, Betsy, they don't even really realize the value they can bring to the market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have no idea what their skill set, how to pull it all together and be able to get premium pricing. And that's the thing that I love to pull out of them and really extrapolate that value and show them this is your opportunity here. It's not the thing over here that you thought it was. It's how can we pull all of your collective expertise, experience. One of the things that I think has helped me be successful in this business is because I'm not a one-trick pony. I've been around the block. I have lots of, not only just for myself, but working with hundreds of different types of businesses. I've worked in over 50 different industries as a coach, helping people in their businesses from plumbing companies to roofing. That gives you a lot of depth in your experience. And I pulled all that together to be able to build more of a premium model because I do have insights and experience and expertise that someone who just says, oh, hey, I think I want to become a coach. I think I'm going to buy into this organization and become a business coach, even though I've never owned a business and I've never signed the front of a paycheck. And that happens. That to me is where a lot of people kind of go off instead of saying, wow, I have all of this career collateral, all of this expertise, and let me do something with that. So that's why I love doing what I do with people because they have no idea what that looks like, how they can bring that value to the market, and how they can get paid really, really insane, crazy fees to do that.
Well, and I think sometimes like when people are dealing with corporate, like they don't understand how corporate people think about money. Like that's to me the biggest difference between my B2B and my B2C business
Mm-hmm.
is it's so much easier to land work in a B2B business if is big if big capital if with like blinking lights is if you understand how corporations think about hiring consultants, why they would do it, and how
Mm-hmm.
they think about the money. Because when you're landing work in a corporation, as long as you have a decent business case and you could establish the value of what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
show the ROI, they're fine because it's not like they're making a decision between paying you and feeding the babies. When you're in a
Exactly.
B2C business, you have to create a different kind of model. You need more volume because you're dealing with somebody who is making those choices,
Right.
versus in those kind of things. So it's really building that business acumen, the savvy of what's going on in the organization and showing up as a premium brand because an executive is used to a certain quality. So if you have like a DIY website that, doesn't look great, well, you just
Right.
shape thinking of who you are. If you go in and they say, hey, well, what do we want you to do this training program. And you're like, yep, sure. Cool thing. It's like, well, you're not going to be seen as a credible partner. How do you build that in somebody? How do you build that mindset and that savvy to be that proactive advocate in an organization to say, this is what you need to do. And this is how I'm going to show up. And I'm going to proactively advocate for what I think you really need in my contribution.
When you are going from say low fees or even as an employee, this would be another way to look at it. You cannot have a scarcity mindset because like you said, with business, with corporations, and this is why I love working in that space because they do think about money differently. They are used to investing money. They're used to paying out big things, big amounts of money for what they want. They're always looking at the ROI. That is what they are investing in. So it is a very different model. I love it because of that, because I can move people into those much more premium fees a lot of times some of the coaches I work with, they're not in the business sector. But when I see what they're able to do, we can move them into the business sector and they
Mm-hmm.
get paid a heck of a lot more, sometimes 20 or 50 times more, which is crazy. So for me, that's what I love. But you said it too. I kind of use the same thing saying, well, if somebody has to decide between you or the electric bill, who's going to win, right? You said feed the baby. I love that too, but that's the truth of it, because you're talking about a fixed income. You're talking about no way for them to get their money back, really, because there's not going to be an ROI. There's value to everything, but not in the same way. When you're dealing with businesses and in the professional space, the ROI is monetary. So it's like getting money at a discount. That's the way I
Do
always.
you mind if I push back just a little bit on that one?
Sure, go ahead.
Because people are going to hire people like us. And I would say, I absolutely will give you an ROI. I'm going to accelerate your results. I'm going to help you avoid expensive trial and error. But I have to communicate it in a way that I understand that pressure that you're dealing with and that decision making. I think that the difference sometimes in corporate is it's not their money they're playing with. They have a budget that's entrusted to them. So whether they pay you $20,000 or $50,000, all they have to do is pass the red face test. In terms of if finance is going to question them, they have to be able to pass the red face test, and you can equip them to pass the red face test, but they're not making that big of a personal decision. But it is an ROI. Working with people like us is an ROI, a massive ROI.
That's true. I mean, that's what I said. There is value to everything. You're right. It is a matter of communicating. And it's a matter of going after the right audience or the right market, because you
Right.
cannot get blood from a turnip, so to speak.
That's
Right.
true.
And so you do have to make sure that so if you're going to go into a premium model and you're going to work with like B2C, then you have to go after people that are more affluent, that the money is not an issue. And so you have to really raise, the bar for who you're trying to market to and who you're trying to attract. So yes, in that respect, I mean, even if you think about, for example, a CEO of a company who's going through a divorce and you're a relationship coach, well, there's going to be an ROI if a relationship coach can stop that divorce and save that marriage, right? So there is absolutely value in everything. But you're right, it has to be communicated, and it has to be the right market as well.
And if you
Stay-at-home
do,
mom who's struggling is going to have a tough time.
And if you are going to go after the stay-at-home mom who's struggling, then you just need to create a business model, and you do have to invest in other marketing skills. You could make that one profitable for yourself, depending on, you could do a course, you could do membership, you could do a lot of things at a lower price point, but you just have to really be intentional, what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So going back to intentions as we kind of wrap up our conversation, I want to go back to your initial motivation to leave corporate and start a business. So I asked you earlier, like how old your kids were, and like now looking at the decision you made, how old are your kids? My kids my kids were like 3 and 5 when I left Disney. They are now 19 and 21. So I don't know if you're in a similar state of life as I am.
I'm so much older than that. So my daughter's 34, my son is 35, and I have 4 grandkids. I have triplet grandkids. I have triplets that are 6. And then they just had a new baby sister in November.
Congratulations.
And so
you do not look like
I have
that.
4. Oh, well, thank you.
You do not look like a grandma.
Well, I'm a nana. I'm not a grandma. I'm a nana.
Well, I married somebody with a grandchild this past year, so I'm BB. So I've got my fun name too. But tell me a little bit about your perspective now, if you look at your career in hindsight, making that really important decisions. Your kids are grown, you have grandkids now. Like what do you see in terms of the arc of your entrepreneurial journey? And, what would you say to that younger person who is trying to make a decision around, should I leave? Should I start this business? What would you say to her?
I think there's nothing like business. You can build wealth with business. It can change your life. It's who you become. I think Jim Rohn said it years ago. It's not about making the $1 million. It's who you become to make the $1 million. And I think there's just nothing like business. There's nothing that can change your life like business can. So I am all for anyone but doing it. But big but, you have to be committed and you have to realize there are ups and downs. um, Looking back, I really wish my first business would have been in today's time. I mean, obviously not changing that, but I can't even imagine if my first business would have been in today's time with the technology, with everything that we have. People have such an opportunity today. It's just crazy what they can accomplish today. And just firing up a laptop. I didn't have this luxury, right, to do that
Mm-hmm.
as a stay-at-home mom. And so I am just all for, if you really believe that you're committed and you're willing to go all in, then do it. I mean, do it. I think there's nothing better. And it's so much, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it's also, there's the reward is so great. When I look back and I think, and I don't believe that I've done anything without God. I mean, I just truly believe that in my heart. But when I look back and I see what's been accomplished and the thing, I mean, there, that feels good to me that I've accomplished those things and that I've written 3 books and that I've helped thousands of people through the years. And even now, when I have people come up and say, you changed my life, I still think about you when it comes to even fitness.
Wow.
That means so much. I mean, that is a legacy, right? So I just, you can't do that with anything else, in my opinion. I think business is the way to do that.
So how does somebody get it? Speaking of your 3 books, how do people get access to those 3 books or get to know more about you and your programs?
Yes, you can go to my website at Ann L. Carden. L is the middle initial .com, mainly because I couldn't get Ann Carden at the time. So it's annlcarden.com. Also, you can find me. I have a big YouTube channel and you can find me just Google me and you can find me anywhere basically that you want. So, but my books are on my website and they'll take you to Amazon to get them. So you can get them on Amazon as well. So thank you for
So
asking.
one's on The Expert in You, which is what I see behind you. So that's one
Mhm.
of your books. And what are the other 2 books about?
Yeah, the other 2 are business books that I wrote when I was working with small business owners. So they're all around small business. So one is, 10 money making marketing secrets, and the other one is small business success. So and then I'm a believer, write a book around what you are doing right now so that you have an expert book for what you are doing right now. So I wrote my Expert in You book when I started working with coaches and consultants. Really, I wrote that out of frustration, if you want to know the truth, to kind of push back on the industry a bit. But yeah, so those are the 3.
Very cool. And so do you do mostly one-on-one or do you do group programs or what's the best? How do you engage with your clients?
I do one-on-one and I do high-end masterminds. So I have both of those. One-on-one, I work with people a lot of different ways. So I can work with them short, I can work with them a VIP day. Just depends on what they need. I am not about cookie cutter. I am about selling with integrity. So I put people into what is going to be the best fit for them. And but I have high-end masterminds and then I also run some high-end retreats as
Very
well.
cool. So, is there anything else that you would want to tell me about consulting, coaching, anything about entrepreneurship? And I just didn't ask you the right question.
I think you have covered a lot of it. I can't think of anything offhand that we haven't really talked about. I'm trying to think. I think if I had to leave people with sort of a parting thought, I would just say 2 things. Never quit growing, and know that this is a journey that you have to consistently grow. And like I said, it's dynamic, right? And the other thing is never quit raising your bar. So I bought your program, Betsy. I will tell people that because I'm always wanting to see what else I can learn, and that's just the way I am wired, and that has served me really well in business, to always stay at the top of my game, cutting edge. What can I learn from other people? I certainly don't know it all. So I always keep my eyes open for people that are doing brilliant things and what can I learn from them?
I love that. I think that's such a great way to end it because, some people might be wondering, like, okay, Betsy, you're bringing somebody who sounds like she does a lot of things like you do. Like, why would you bring someone on your show who's a competitor? I'm like, well, there's no competitors. We live in an abundant universe,
Mhm.
and you and I don't do exactly the same thing, but we
Mm-mm.
have the same heart. And I think that the same heart resonates with one another. It's just the whole idea of being in this business because we want to make a difference,
Mhm.
wanting to really empower people to own their strengths and own the power of their expertise. And I think that that's just beautiful, that just always be learning and learning from everybody who's around you. I just love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.